Welcome back to Studio G. Great to have you back.
Glad to be here, Garrett. Thank you.
Talk to us about your vacation. What you get into?
Saw some friends, attended a birthday party, got a subwoofer.
In not here in Minnesota, but down
Yeah,
in
I drove
Nebraska.
I drove down to Omaha, and it was great to be on the road because I have had so many trips canceled. Man, did it feel good to just be on the road and have a nice playlist going. But being down in Omaha and not seeing my father because he's in Arizona,
Yeah.
that was so weird. That was the weirdest part.
It must be great for him to get away from the cold.
To get away
for
from
the
me.
winter. I mean, maybe that could be it as well.
Yeah, thanks. No, but he was talking about how when he got down there, it was still 90 degrees, and
Wow. I need a little bit of the chill. It's getting there are those evenings
you
where
said
it's
you're getting
into
hardier.
it's getting into the teens, late
Yeah.
at night, and I enjoy just grabbing a heavy sweater if I need to run to the store. I'm in the car and just not outside for long. There was a time in my life when teens, 20s really, but much less teens, everything I had would have been on for me to just go from the house to the car.
Your blood's thickening up.
Yeah, that's what Minnesota will do to you.
Mhm.
All right, well, we're this week's downbeat. We have to offer a rest in peace to the now late young Dolph. You sent me this news. That's where I read it initially. I'm sure you didn't know any of his music or anything, but I guess you saw the Memphis connection.
I did. I was curious if you knew the artist and if you knew where he was in town when he got hit.
I think it's very significant. And if folks can understand anything, the fact that Memphis, the city of Memphis, is being named throughout this story. Anyone who's talking about young Dolph and his life and what he did, all over the news, wherever it is, Memphis is being brought up. And I think that's a very important point because it really speaks to what he did for the city. A lot of these rappers is one of the deeper hip hop conversations we won't get into on this podcast. But something that is discussed is once you make it, you leave your hood and don't come back because you can't live there anymore based on your successes X, Y, and Z.
Can't even go to a coffee shop.
Young Dolph was not one of those folks. He was always independent. He never relied on a record label or anything, and he was always very much invested in the community, in the city of Memphis. I knew his name as a community person, as someone who would do the turkey drives and do this for the kids and do that. And I being from Memphis, I know he's had some street business, but what business is that of mine? But none. And so
Right.
I just didn't think of that. I didn't center that. I always centered the good because there was always a lot of it. Well, he was tragically killed in Memphis. It's the last time we recorded in front of Makeda's Cookies, and that was a spot that I went all the time when I was living in Memphis. It's an institution to that part of town.
My question was if he was an artist of a stature to have people after him, or if he was an activist or a leader in the community somehow.
All of the above.
All of that.
All of the above. When it's all distilled down into who he was, all of that plays a role.
Yeah.
Anyway, to highlight the type of energy he brought, to spaces and to the world and to individuals, I wanted to do a downbeat from one of his 2018 concerts. Let's take a listen to this.
Check this out. I know y'all familiar with the situation that happened at Duke University a couple of days ago, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, they fired 2 workers from a coffee shop for bumping my shit in the store.
Hell no.
Matter of fact, I brought them out here, flew them out here with me, man.
Okay.
This is the kind of shit I do.
Real niggas do real shit. I see you, dog.
Know what I'm saying? So, keep in mind, this was a VP at Duke University that fired them. At work, for playing the song, Get Paid. So check this out. This is what we gonna do. I know for a fact that VP at that school, he get money, but he ain't get money like Dolph. So look, check this out. Until y'all get y'all a new job, till y'all find y'all a new job, I got $20,000 for y'all right now.
Let's go! Rolling loud! Paper Route Empire!
All right. So we have what many people would categorize as some rowdy concert. All the young people just getting loud, all this violent music, X, Y, and Z. But look what happens in those spaces. Look at the hope that those Duke students were filled with, thinking about somebody in the world giving a damn, actually caring about what many people would just swat off as a small, insignificant thing. Oh, they got fired from their college job, whatever, they'll be fine. But this is somebody who actually cares. This is somebody who gives a damn about the next generation and the people in his community. Do you think the people at that whatever, I think he said Starbucks or Barnes and Noble, whatever, wherever they work,
Starbucks.
Starbucks, do you think they got together, pulled together, and gave those fired employees any money, much less $20,000?
Oh, I
Do
doubt
you
it.
think the management did something? Any of the deans up at Duke did
Don't know.
anything? But you have this rapper who did that. So multiply that, just consider that one example of the way he moved around in the world, in the
Mm.
community,
Mhm.
and much less what he did for his local community within Memphis. Makeda's Cookies is just one of those institutions where you pass through, you buy some cookies, and you go on. A black-owned business that's been there for years, and for him to be killed there really just shows the desperation that we're living in. I know it's so easy for some people to go to the whole all the black on black crime thing or whatever, but we have to look at the systems that are in place that are causing this. And I know for a lot of people, something that I have really had to sit in and accept. For a lot of people, when we start having these conversations, it's above their head, beyond what they can understand, so it's not even worth having the
Right.
conversation. But I mean, you can understand. It's about the systems that are in place to make someone poor, to put someone in the situation to have nothing, and see someone that they knew, that they went to high school with, that they grew up with. He's got it. He's got all this money. He's got all this stuff. And why don't I? That resentment is
Right.
real. And so
Right.
we have to take a look at the systems in place. But but before we get into talking about street stuff and what kind of beef was going on and why he got killed, I think it's so important to highlight the good that was being done, and not only the good as something to the side, but the preeminence of the good. What we just saw at that concert was something that happens every single day with someone of his stature and,
Well,
and
that's
of
what
his spirit.
that's what I was going to ask you next. So you said that he has a reputation of being kind of rowdy,
Yeah,
right? And his
yeah.
concerts get rough. Is
Oh
that
yeah.
right?
I mean, it's hip hop. Come on,
Right. Okay, so I can definitely see how that would be more of his front-facing reputation than the money that he gave away, because this is the first time I'm hearing of, him giving away $20,000 to two guys that lost their job.
I mean, but come on, this is the first time of you hearing him, period, right? This
I've heard
last
that.
week.
I can't. No, you're right that I haven't heard any of his music, even though that was an assumption,
Yeah,
but it was a correct one.
yeah.
But no, I had heard the name. What's your question?
I'll no, I don't have a question. All
Mm.
all I'm saying is as we, continue to really explore the idea of equity in the arts and decolonizing our minds and certain conversations surrounding music, we really have to take every opportunity we have to take these rappers, take these musical artists from these genres and from these aesthetics that classical spaces certainly have not centered, and display their worth and their value to communities. Because whatever the city in North Carolina that Duke is at, we're not talking about their local orchestra. We're not reading the story about their local orchestra doing something for those students, or doing anything, on the stature of changing the lives of students in that way. And I think even beyond the money, again, I think that spirit, that karma that he's putting along, when those students go and make a cajillion dollars a year as nuclear engineers or whatever, they will be able to speak to a real situation in which that person to person philanthropy, that just good natured, that goodness, how
Hmm.
that was spread. How much more will they spread when they have the opportunity to
Hmm.
do stuff? And who else is talking about these things, these positive things, except the black outlets and those of us on the
There,
ground from
there
Memphis
you hit
who
it.
who know?
There you
You
hit
know,
it.
you won't see any of these classic FMs or any of this talk about that, but we're trying to get to the point to if we recognize the classic nature of these individuals and these musical ideas and genres that are foundational to the United States, we can get there. I see that future, but we have to normalize these conversations. So anyway, my very long way of saying that's how I wanted to begin this opus of Triloquy, by honoring the late young Dolph. Imagine being a mother and having to tell your child, that your dad is never coming home. Imagine the conversation that has to be had there. These are real people, real families,
Mhm.
impacted by this. We don't always humanize hip hop, even black music and black bodies beyond that. But that's something that we do here
Mm.
on this podcast. Let's go ahead and get to it. I'm Garrett McQueen,
I'm Scott Blankenship.
and this is Triloquy, Opus 126. Thank you for checking us out. To returning listeners, thank you for making sure that we remain a vital part of the music ecosystem and all of the forces moving to change things in those music systems. The forces, Scott. The force. This is the way. To new listeners, thank you so much for checking us out. Triloquy is a podcast that takes the phrase classical music and puts it in a completely different context. We take the genre, we take the aesthetics surrounding it, and even the conversations surrounding it, and push it toward a more decolonized contemporary view of that phrase and everything that deals with it. For more information on the Triloquy podcast, visit triloquy.org. You can check out past opuses and also donate to the Triloquy podcast there on the website. In addition to your support, the Triloquy podcast is made possible by the Shuttleworth Foundation. The Shuttleworth Foundation funds individuals who are unafraid to reimagine the world and the way we live in it. More information at shuttleworthfoundation.org. I'd also like to send a big thanks to the Springboard for the Arts here in St. Paul, Minnesota. Springboard for the Arts mission is to support artists with the tools to make a living and a life, and to build just and equitable communities full of meaning, joy, and connection. More information at springboardforthearts.org. Also, a lot of business to tend to this week, Scott. I need to thank
Go ahead.
once again Molly McCann and everyone over at Hensel Pushers. Did you see the fanny packs?
I did. That was clever.
The fanny packs on social media. Love it. I love
That's
it.
good.
Dell has a fanny pack coming. So for folks who weren't with us last week, Hensel Pushers exists to make the compositions of Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel more accessible and to invite musicians to explore their own musicality as they engage with her work. In addition to their ongoing effort to provide free PDF scores of Hensel's more than 450 compositions, Hensel Pushers is publishing their first books, an easy piano arrangement of Hensel's groundbreaking cycle Das Jahr, or the Year, and a companion lesson book with exercises in technique and musicianship for early to mid to intermediate level pianists of all ages. Buy the books for yourself or for a piano student or teacher in your life today. Pre-sale and discounted prices end on November 30th. More information and to purchase, visit henselpushers.org to pre-order. Let me ask you, since we're here, last week Delaney and I talked about the good of naming Fanny Hensel's husband as someone who helped her career, who was a supporter, all the way to the extent of remembering the composer not as Fanny Mendelssohn, but Fanny Hensel, or Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel. From your perspective, in a classical genre, in a classical tradition so dominated by men,
Mm-hmm.
should there be any room, any space to making that point from your perspective that Fanny had a husband who was in the back seat supporting full-fledged, supporting with all of his energy, but from the back seat,
I think that's great.
Yeah. Really
Yeah.
really showcasing
Yeah.
I'm trying to make an analogy here. Sorry, I'm losing my thought. Like when you make chamber music, you're locked in with someone toward a common goal. It's
Mhm.
like Fanny and her husband, they were locked in a similar way toward the goal of making sure that her music survived and got a space. So,
Something similar happened with the Schumanns. When Clara started getting more attention, Robert was starting to get like, hey, I'm supposed to be the one
but see
getting the
that's
gigs.
that's the point, because Fanny's husband was not like that.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
that's why we honor him. Yeah,
Right.
Clara was the breadwinner.
She was the bomb.
She was
Yeah.
the one. She was the head of the household.
And also keep in mind that Fanny, in a very short span of time, like overnight, wrote music for her wedding day when her brother Felix dropped the ball. So
I did not know
show
that
some
story.
respect
So he's at
to
the
Fanny.
bachelorette party fucking off, and she's like, "Fine, I'll do it."
Right?
Damn.
Yeah, it's not like I'm getting married tomorrow.
Woo, shout out to all of the women over history who have had to deal with these cishet men. I don't see how y'all do it. I don't see how y'all do it.
If it were me, I would have been like, yeah, I'm married to Claire Schumann. Yeah, that's my wife. Yep.
Anyway, y'all go support Hensel Pushes over there at henselpushes.org. One more quick announcement. We're getting into the holiday season.
Like it or not.
Beginning at the end of this week, for as far as I'm concerned, because y'all will start before Halloween. Y'all will get started. Anyway,
Not
we're
me.
getting into the holiday season officially. Adrian Dunn and the Rise Orchestra have a Black Messiah album release event. So last holiday season, last year, Adrian Dunn came on the show, incredible Chicago-based composer, to talk about Black Messiah and everything that he was doing with that. Well, it's been recorded, and they're having a release party. Black Messiah retells the story of the birth of Christ from a Black narrative perspective. You can get tickets to this event at adriandunn.com. Really, really incredible work going on all over the arts, especially in Chicago. We have the queer Carmen. We have Black Messiah. The third movement guests this week are the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, shaking up the orchestral space with Third Stream.
You think you could live there?
Shout out to Chicago. Chicago is more of a city than I thought it was. We talked about that, when I was there. I don't know if I could. It would be a Chicago, not a suburb, but near similar to where I live now, a stone's throw from downtown, but on the other side of the river. I can see it over there. It's right there when I need it, but it's not so hustle
Sure.
bustle.
Yeah.
But maybe that's me getting older. Why, are you ready to move? You ready to move the pod to Chicago? Is that what you're saying?
I am not.
All right. Well, that does it for all the announcements. Thanks again, y'all, for being here. Let's get into movement one. All right, Scott, real quick. I have several naturals to offer, just 3 naturals to offer from last week. In talking about all classical
I started
Portland.
to worry. I wasn't here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not you this time. So I was talking about the award that All Classical Portland got for their diversity in their programming. They have artists now, All Classical Portland artists who perform all around and stuff. Because I was thinking about Delaney living in Seattle, I kept getting All Classical Portland mixed up with King FM.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that the station in Portland is All Classical Portland. King FM is a Seattle area station. So shout out to the specific Northwest. I hope to get out there someday. I've had a layover flight in Seattle, but I've never been to Oregon or Washington State.
I was trying to get to Seattle when I ended up moving here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got people up there.
And look what happened. You're here on a podcast.
I do love Seattle.
And then I also want to send a natural. The pianist William Chapman Nyaho is Ghanaian. He's not Nigerian. He is Ghanaian. So huge shout out to William Chapman Nyaho and everyone who listened so carefully to correct me on these things.
Yeah, man.
I wanted to also quickly mention that a few people have been in the inbox asking about my opinion on Britney Spears and the conservatorship falling and stuff. I want to talk about it after the Oprah interview, because I'm sure some things will come up. And I'm tired of Oprah because, she gets the interviews. Yeah.
Why are you tired?
If something big happens, she gets it done. I look up to that. But it's like, how can you compete? Not to say that I was trying to get Britney Spears on TRILLOQUY, but Oprah just has the people. She has the resources.
You want to get Oprah on TRILLOQUY?
I would have to figure out what to ask her. Maybe we could start with The Color Purple or something, since you know that so well. Anyway, all right. First, I didn't give it my natural. sounds.
All
Okay,
right.
so all of those naturals. All right, so getting started this week, I want to begin with an article from the Houston Chronicle, HoustonChronicle.com. Headline: Houston's Apollo chamber player debuts work dealing with slavery on Saturday. Let me read a little bit. So, putting rehearsals on Zoom has changed the relationship between Houston's Apollo chamber players and the composers they commission. Before COVID, quote, we normally wouldn't record something and send it beforehand. We would wait until they travel to Houston 3 or 4 days before the concert and play things for them. Looking back, when we do that, there's not a lot of big things you can do to change a piece in a small amount of time before the concert. So they're speaking to the before four times, but with this they did something different. It says here, Zoom paid off big time when Apollo chamber players sent an early take of Deep River Rhapsody to its composer Adolphus Hailstork. Oh, and it talks about the different things that Adolphus Hailstork has done, including getting his music performed at the inauguration. This goes on to say their first attempt had been fine, he told them, but lacked a certain context. He really was very explicit with what he wanted us to convey through his musical language and what he was writing. According to Hellstork's program notes, this piece represents a slave's visions of escape over the river, usually the Ohio. This idea carries with it a sense of energy, of freedom, even joy, and the humor they imagine upon deliverance. I'll let
Mm-hmm.
y'all read the rest of that. First and foremost, let me give this a sharp because I think this is a good story. So often when we talk about diversifying playlists, diversifying performances, putting on and platforming music by Black artists and marginalized artists, it you can quickly get to the conversation of, oh well, should we be doing this or who should be in the room and X, Y, and Z. Even from reading this headline, Houston's Apollo chamber players debut work dealing with slavery. If
Mm-hmm.
you work in the biz, if you are in the classical music space and recognize the Apollo chamber players as an all-white ensemble,
Mm-hmm.
that's a part of the core of the institution of Big C classical music in America, classical music TM, it's easy to say, "Oh my gosh, this is problematic. What are we doing? What's happening?" But I think this is a really great example of how conversation, about how collaboration, and even a change in the way things go, a change in protocol. Because again, they said they wouldn't normally do that. They wouldn't normally record a piece and send it to the composer and take all those extra steps. But
That's a
here they did.
yeah.
So anyway, all of that to say, as that conversation of can the all white ensemble play X or sing Y or whatever, we can look to this as an example of how that can happen and can happen with a positive outcome all around.
Wasn't it like 2 weeks ago you were talking about composers writing feelings on a score, or like have working with somebody that would say, think of this as you play
Oh,
the
sure.
music.
Yeah, that was actually in an upcoming interview. So,
So
so
yeah, okay. So
not to
my
be released yet,
yeah,
but
that kind of
yeah.
that kind of sounds a little bit about what's going on here.
Hmm.
A good artist can, like an actor, if you get a little coaching, like you do from, like they did from Hale Stork through that Zoom,
Hmm.
boy, you can really make some changes that mean something.
Yeah.
And it was great because it was great because it seems like otherwise they would not have fulfilled Hale Stork's vision if they hadn't had that opportunity to have him listen to an advanced recording.
And again, the specifics of the different things that had to be put in place, I think, due in part to the sensitivity of the subject matter
Yeah,
of the
that's
piece of
true.
music.
That's true.
It would be very easy for us to be talking about this, with a
Yeah,
flat and with the buzzer,
yeah,
right? But this
yeah.
is but this is something good. So I mean, I wonder if you can speak to how a shift in certain protocols or a shift in the way certain things have been done are an important part of this. Would you, if let's say that you have a piece of music on an upcoming playlist and you have to say the word, I don't know, Negro, and maybe that's not a word that you're uncomfortable with, but would taking the extra step of having a 5-minute conversation with the composer of that piece of music be too much work as far as getting a story told, or the genuineness that you can bring to it after a conversation like that, some sort of collaboration that you wouldn't be able to bring to it if you hadn't done that thing? And I'm not saying you need to call every black composer on your playlist, but my point is there's some usefulness to that.
Yeah, 100%. Mainly because I don't have that perspective.
Right. Right.
So, why not get the person who made the art explain the perspective rather than me look at some liner notes, get the gist of it, and then try to BS something in the interview?
And that you segue us so beautifully into the bigger conversations that this inspires.
Oh
What do
boy.
you do if the space in which you work does not have different perspectives, right?
Mm.
What good can be done if there isn't that different voice, especially the voice of a perspective that you're trying to platform artistically in some way, right?
Hmm.
You can't have just what most of these orchestras and opera houses look like, even still in 2021, and alleged to move forward unless you have something from the outside. So, and we can get into the conversation of the slippery slope of, well, you don't want to bring someone in specifically for that necessarily, because that means there's still a power dynamic being held there in service to you and your understanding and X, Y, and Z. And I don't know if
Hmm.
considering the whiteness that surrounds your professional work. What do you think must be done? What has to be done to infuse those different perspectives into these professional spaces, these professional art spaces?
From my perspective, there are changes that are happening. Are they happening quickly? No. But they are happening. And the way that I look at it now is there's a lot of, when you used to go to a shopping mall and there'd be a board up in front of an old stall where it says, coming soon, something's
Hmm.
happening, and there's work going on behind it. That's the only way that I can explain it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I can tell you that I'm doing my own. In addition to everything that's happening there, I'm doing my own.
And
And
what do you mean by that? And I'm not trying to get you to break down everything you're doing, but when you say do your own, I'm just thinking about the fact that there is own to be done. We often think about ourselves as not being able to have big influence or change this or whatever, but it sounds like within the confines of the specific thing you work at your institution to do, you're still able to do
mhm.
something in a positive direction toward these conversations.
Um, I think a lot of organizations are going through DEI training. They've got their workshops or they're hiring people on to come in and
Hmm.
lead conversations or seminars, whatever. And yeah, those are great. But it's once that 8-week thing is done, you're not
Hmm.
done.
Hmm.
That's where your work starts.
Right.
So, and a lot of times, some of the people that I've talked to said that they're not getting anything out of this, that it's too basic. Well, then that shows that you've got to go and do your own. You have to go and do your own Google searches, find
Hmm.
your own books, and have your own conversations,
Yeah, and do your own work.
and try to bring that to the air. Now, a lot of times I get reactions from people that I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. No matter what I do, I've got somebody taking pot shots at me. But I can tell you that I would rather be damned doing than damned don'ting.
That as well as I'm trying to watch my profanity. Welcome to the French toasting world, especially the world of a person of color,
Right.
certainly a woman of color in certain spaces.
I can say that I definitely get his perspective that you talked about a lot about just taking heat from several different directions.
Mhm.
I get a bit clearer picture on that now, and I'm trying to get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable more because it being uncomfortableness is just going to be a daily thing for me.
Yeah.
I know that some people are avoiding it or whatever, but I think a lot about it. And it's just I'm just trying to comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And what can ease some of that discomfort, I think, are some of those honest person to person, institution to institution, community to community conversations and collaboration. So shout out, and again, offering the sharp to the Apollo Chamber players.
Good
I
for
don't
them.
I don't know what else is going on, but it's good for me to see an example to offer to people of how these things can get done. Again, uh where we're getting, it'll be, before we know it, it'll be Black History Month, and it'll be all the conversations of, well, there are no black people in our choir. Can we sing a Negro spiritual or X, Y, and Z? Well, read this article so you have an example of how it can be done and how it can be done equitably. Amen.
I heard a story about a local women's choir here that they wanted to sing a black woman's piece called Sweet Honey in the Rock or something like that.
Hmm.
And a white woman, had a conniption fit that they were appropriating. So they wrote the composer and said, do you mind? We're all white. Do you mind if we do this? And she wrote back, I want choirs to sing
Right,
my stuff.
right, right.
So,
Now,
yeah,
to that though, with that being said, you wouldn't have a person. Well, I won't say me or you. Royal they, the classical music institutions wouldn't have someone singing Bach or Schubert without having some training or some sort of knowledge of that tradition, right?
probably.
So the same applies to black music. If
Mm,
you have never approached a spiritual, if you don't know what black church is, if you don't have any sort of experience within that conversation, you also can't just jump into that in that way. So there is that consideration
mm.
to be made. So if it is one of these all white choirs or all white ensembles playing black music, there, at least, again, that's the important of this collaboration part. There has to be someone in the room that sort of training, that perspective to be given, so that the respect can be put on the music that it deserves. Not only how it sounds, the right notes, the affects, but the respect that we put on this Western, white European classical music. That same respect, if not more, needs to be put on this black music, and that's where those different perspectives play an important role in all of that.
Agreed.
Anyway, well, the piece of music, again, that the Apollo Chamber players performed, it was a setting of the spiritual Deep River. We won't listen to that by Adolphus Hailstork, but the famed Samuel Coleridge Taylor, the Afro-English composer, he set Deep River as well. So we're going to listen to a bit of this music for piano and violin, performed here by Wynton Grant and Stefan Petrov. What we need to do, I thought of this as we were listening to that. What we need to do, Scott, is allow black music the same je ne sais quoi we put on European cuisine, European visual art, European music. It's more than just the notes. It's more than just the music. There is just a something that was in that performance that just almost wanted
An
to pull at
understand.
me a
It's
little
an
bit.
understanding.
A language, a communication that's
Hmm.
happening. So, and able to speak that language, that je ne sais quoi sort of spirit behind the music language, you need that proximity. You need that proximity to the perspectives, to the stories, and to the individuals who have been impacted by those stories one way or another. And you just can't have that if your all white orchestra remains as such.
Right, right.
And it's
Some
just that simple.
something similar happens to me with traditional Irish and Scottish music. So you wanted to get choked up by listening to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's and when it's played right, when it hits you right,
Hmm.
ooh,
And the best of those musics, the most impactful of those musics, can even go beyond the what they were the original settings they were meant for. I'm gonna take the time. We'll skip right ahead to the for the sake of time to the final accidental as soon as I do this. But you said you have not watched the show Dope Sick
I
at all,
haven't.
right?
No.
Okay, I definitely highly recommend, but
Who's got that?
I think it's Hulu. Anyway, at the end of the final episode, I'm pretty sure it's the final episode, they have a performance of Black is the Color of My True Love's Hair.
That's my favorite.
It takes place, first of all, Dope Sick takes place in Appalachia. So there's a lot of Scots Irish tradition up in there. I used to say Scotch Irish, and boy, this man, when I was on the radio down in Knoxville, oh, he got me together. So I will never again make that mistake. Scots Irish. Anyway, so you have all of that Scots Irish culture in Appalachia, and they have this really incredible performance of Scots Irish tune called "Black is the Color of My True Love's Hair."
But black is the color of my true love's hair. His face is something wondrous fair. The prettiest eyes and the neatest hands. I love the ground whereon he stands. I love my love, and well he knows. I love the ground.
So the you can hear not only the song but the setting and the culture. It's so beautiful. Of course, the version I know is Nina Simone.
Of course.
And that's a beautiful version. Anyway,
Oh, her treatment's lovely.
I'll put a link if y'all don't know it in the description. We won't listen to it today, but anyway, all of this is my long way of saying, getting back to that Samuel Coleridge Taylor Deep River. There is something beyond just the music, and this Black is the Color, despite the fact that the culture from which that comes has very little to do with me, Appalachia and all of that sort of thing. I still feel it because the spirit of it is there, and that spirit isn't inherent. There has to be proximity to the stories and the individuals. So anyway,
I see what you're saying.
Anyway, go listen to all of that stuff. Go watch Dope Sick, and let's get to our next and final accidental. We'll keep it to two this week. You brought in you brought in something.
Oh, you wanted to go the Guthrie route?
Yeah, go ahead and talk about what
How
you
much?
got.
How much? Let me take that again. I've seen from Instagram you've actually been out in community.
I've been outside. I've been outside. I
going to some stuff.
I got my booster shot. At this point, I have 3 shots. So goddamn,
How-
can I not go anywhere? I'm still wearing my mask.
How how are people acting? What's the pulse like of the?
People are friendly. Shout out to Fourth Wall. We're working on a Triloquy feature for Fourth Wall, but there's a trio ensemble that I saw last week, and the audience was just so excited to be there. And but before the show started, a lot of have you seen Fourth Wall before? Have you been to this theater before? So just a lot of chatter and a lot of excitement for people to be in community with people to enjoy some art, enjoy some music. That's what I've experienced so far.
I just think people ain't acting right. People are going off for weird reasons and way overreacting. And this story came up. This is a little bit stale, but
Is this a flat or a natural?
I'm going to give this a flat, yeah, because I just wish that it wasn't so. The Guthrie Theater is back to having in-person performances. They're having people in the theater, and A Christmas Carol.
And for the folks who don't know, the Guthrie Theater over in Minneapolis
is a huge community theater.
Yeah.
It's the biggest in the Midwest. Before that, the Omaha Playhouse was the biggest community theater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But so this woman, right as the lights go down for A Christmas Carol, just goes off and starts screaming. So there's video out there. So she got offended by a couple of people sitting in front of her, took a selfie, just to, during the curtain talk.
Yeah.
Right. And she just got all hacked off.
All right. Let's start there. So as someone who has worked in the theatre, who has
I spelled that ER
has written theater, you appreciate the theater space. Is there's a prescribed culture of Your phone should be in your pocket at all times. How dare you take a picture, much less a selfie? Is that sort of the general energy of going to see a play?
Same as a concert, same as an
Okay,
opera,
okay.
right? And take pictures, just not while the show's going on.
Okay, well, these young women didn't take a picture while the show was going
No, it's the
on. They
curtain talk.
oh, the
Yeah.
like a pre-show talk.
Yeah,
I
when
see. I
they're
got it.
telling you to turn everything off, they quick got a selfie.
And that made
And
the
this
woman
woman,
behind them mad.
she displays more drama
Oh, there was a okay.
than that whole show. 40
I'm tickled.
40 minutes this woman
What's going on?
rails, right? And the theater staff didn't want to get too close to her because she took her mask off and she was spitting on people,
Oh my
you know.
gosh.
So now that's just all uncalled for. You don't have to go that far, right? And here's where, to me, this is where I really started to perk up.
Okay.
She starts yelling, Macbeth. Macbeth!
Why?
Macbeth!
I mean, was she drunk? What does that mean?
In the theater community, that is like cursing the theater.
Oh, so
to shout
so
Macbeth
she's
in
a nerd disruptor.
to sh-
Okay. Okay.
To shout Macbeth in a theater like every theater kid would just
Oh, really? So
collectively.
all of the grad students in the audience gasped. Okay.
So her idea was, you ruined my night at the play, so now yours is going to suck. And I didn't hear this part right. She says they're mocking Shakespearean drama. And I was sitting here thinking, sister, this is Dickens. You are in the wrong theater. But I don't know what she meant here when she said they're mocking Shakespearean drama while they watch an English play. I just don't even know what that was about. So 40 minutes later, they got a butterfly net and hauled her off.
Did they really?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was a butterfly
Oh.
net, but they eventually got her contained, is basically what I'm saying. People are not right.
Well, as we talk about diversifying the concert space, we're going to have more of us who are just going to go to the theater and take a selfie. Damn, I'm happy to be here. I want the followers to see that I came to see a play, you know? So we're going to see more of that.
You are going to see drama.
So you're saying you think we'll also see more of this?
I think so.
Okay, so what's the path ahead? Just to deal with it?
People are
to
on a
ask-
hair trigger, is what I'm saying. People
Yeah.
are on a hair trigger.
So what I'm trying to get to is this a matter? So let's take this away specifically from theater, but you know, any performance space. Is the action moving ahead, making sure we quote unquote train new concert goers, new theater goers, new opera goers, or do we allow them to come to the space as they are and find some way to shift the more traditional audiences in a way of getting used to the new energy that these new audience members are bringing in?
I think that this woman has been to a show before.
Oh, of course, if she's screaming
if
Macbeth, I didn't know
screaming
what that
Macbeth,
meant, you
right.
know?
So I think that this is an example of somebody who's been at home alone
Yeah.
way too long.
And that's not her fault, you know?
And because I'm right there with you,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to go out and start yelling Macbeth in a theater, or telling a jazz man to wrap his solo up. I'm not going to be.
And I
doing any
think
of
and I
that
think
business.
this can be considered an extreme example, but the story could have also been these two young women take a selfie. The woman whispers in their ear, that's very rude. Keep your phone away. And it's only that, microaggressive, but those two, potentially, I don't know if they were new to the theater or not, but let's just pretend they are. These new
Oh,
theater
I
goers
see.
are, now they're rattled. Now I don't belong
I
here.
thought you were talking about the woman that went off, and you're talking about the two people that took a selfie. That's so small. I mean, it was the curtain talk.
So back to the question that I asked. Moving forward, as we diversify these spaces, do we ask people not to come as they are? Keep your cell phone in your pocket, dress this way, clap when you're supposed to. Is that what we need to do as these spaces become more diverse? Or do we need to get the traditional viewers, folks coming into the space, find a way to push them toward being more accepting of the new energy? Which one of you think is the more viable option?
Wow.
That's I think that's the question of this
That's a
situation.
good question. I don't completely hate on the woman, or throw shade to this woman who went off, because I feel like to a certain degree I've gone feral too.
Sure.
I don't, and my communication skills have dulled. I'm not to that point. But as far as I think that we still need to have some conventions. We still
Hmm.
need to hold on to some conventions, because there's certain things that will be distracting to the people who are on stage. I mean, if you were playing a concert, would you be um, distracted if you suddenly started seeing flashes of light in the
Oh, sure,
audience?
sure, absolutely.
Or if somebody came up and started holding a cell phone right up next to you, would you not start to look like, "Eh, what the hell are you doing up
Yeah,
here
I mean,
again?"
and to be fair, that every time you play the 4th of July pops or whatever in an
That's gonna
orchestra, you
happen.
have a camera, especially if you're second bassoon, you're on
Mhm.
the end right here in my face. But that's a specific example, I guess.
No,
But
I think
anyway,
that
but I think there is a conversation there. How many of the conventions do we hold on to, especially considering we want some of these new audience members in here? So do we bore them or make them feel othered or on the outside by the conventions we think are important? What are those conventions? What are the ones that we should throw away?
I think
X,
there
Y, and Z.
yeah, I think there can be a come as you are component, but let's hold on to some conventions that don't distract the people on stage or the people around you and their enjoyment of what's going on stage.
Is it unfair for someone to take a selfie during a pre-concert or pre-show talk? I don't think
No.
so. I'm not
No, no,
offended
no,
by
no,
that.
no, no, not at all. I'm talking about once the curtain goes up and the performance is rolling.
So once a performance, so let's say you went to see a play a couple weeks ago. So let's say you're in here enjoying this play, and during the action, someone takes a selfie or even just takes a photo of the stage. Is that something that you'll be offended by? Are you going to tap on their shoulder at intermission and say something? How important is that to you?
That's distracting, and I don't know if I would confront it yet. Now, I'm let me say that there's a lot of things that I have said that I went back on. So, in the moment, it's highly probable that I would open my mouth and say something that would be inflammatory.
So how
Yeah,
do,
it's
so how,
possible.
so how can we continue to do that and expect new folks to come into the space? I think there's
Mm.
some things that we have to let go of if we want the space to look different. The space is going to be different, and that's not to say that there aren't new audience members who know how to sit down and not get their cell phone out. I think that's a very specific thing. But let's say someone is in the middle of this incredibly dramatic scene in a play, or at the top note of this aria during Madame Butterfly or whatever, and someone's like, "Oh, girl, you better sing," or whatever. Is that something that we don't want in the spaces? Because it is one of those conventions to sit there completely and perfectly quietly
Right.
until it's all done, right? So is that too? What do you think about that? Are you going to be distracted by, "Oh, girl, you better smack him," if a smack happened during a play you're watching or something? Is that audience are the audience vocals something you're offended by?
I've said things out loud when I was surprised.
Okay.
That's happened. And plus, it is really distracting to have some sort of recording go on when you're on stage. It happened when I was in a play,
Mm-hmm.
and during I almost said during the halftime, during intermission, I was in back saying, "Who was taking all the pictures?"
Mm-hmm.
And Scott Working says to me, "That was your dad."
He was excited to be
My
there.
dad was there, and I just wanted to crawl in a hole. I was like, "Oh, geez." No, that's distracting. But I think that if somebody in the audience at the end of an aria says, "You better sing," if I were the person singing the aria, I'd
Mm-hmm.
be like, "Got him."
What about in the middle of it? What about in the very middle of it? Or how concertos work? You have your 2D sections and then your solo sections, or
Hmm.
whatever. If there's roaring applause right after the first solo section of whatever concerto, the orchestra is still going, but the crowd is going wild. Would you be upset by that as an audience member who came to listen to every note of Tchaikovsky's Second Piano Concerto or
Again, but
whatever?
this is me. Okay, so no, not really. And we all know, well, maybe not all of us, but we know that in the day when these concerts were first being premiered, people did that.
Yeah.
People hollered in the middle.
They were
People,
eating, they were doing everything,
right? So, it's today's norms that are saddled on here. So
Okay.
if you want to go back to the day, let's bring in our takeout
I mean,
and our
that's
own
what I say.
drinks.
I would love to go to the orchestra. Oh, a good plate of like some Chinese food or, maybe some really great Indian, and I get to sit here and listen to this concert. I think that would be great. But,
Mm.
not everyone is that forward thinking or decolonist as I am. But, I think I'm willing to give up more of those conventions than you may be. But at the end of the day, I think we can agree that a number of the conventions do have to go if we want to see new energy, new faces, new
Mhm.
bodies in these spaces.
Just no flash photography while the show's going on.
I can agree with that. All right, well, to transition us out of this,
Macbeth!
yeah, I don't even get that. Like that anyway. Um, to transition us out of this and into the second movement, you have some Schubert to listen to. Why is this transitioning us? First of all, we're gonna pray for that woman. I hope that next time that she goes to see A Christmas Carol, first of all, it's during the actual holiday season and not in the middle of November, which people think is the holiday season
Right.
now. But anyway, I hope the next time she sees it, it's then, and she has a wonderful time with the traditional tale of bah humbug, or
Three Ghosts.
is
Yeah.
that what it
Yeah.
all is?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, because what's the name did a Christmas Carol. Vanessa Williams.
Mhm.
That's the first one I knew. Everyone has done a different version.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like when we get really close to Christmas, maybe even Christmas Eve. I do think there is something cozy about finding an old black and white one on TV
Sure.
just to check out and see is weird
Yeah.
or whatever you think. Maybe that's the experience she was trying to have. So I'm not
And
gonna
they
hate on the
ruined
woman,
it
but
with a selfie.
I mean, and now you didn't get to see it at all. So, what was the point of all of that? Anyway, why are we listening to Schubert to transition out of this?
When you think the name Franz Schubert, what picture comes into your mind? Do you see a rabble rouser? Do you
No,
see a
somebody very buttoned up, songwriter, leadermeister.
Yep,
Is that
died
a
at
word?
31.
Yeah.
Yep. Came up to about the shoulder of most of the women that he would have been probably asking to dance. They called him the little mushroom, right? Well,
Ah!
I am here to say that yeah. So I found out that he was arrested. He got arrested
He
when
went to jail.
when he was 16. So yeah, there was all sorts of battles in German states trying to expel Napoleon's armies
Sure.
starting around 1813.
Yeah.
So he's about 16 years old. That's also when he wrote his first symphony. He was out during one of these skirmishes, and him and four of his buddies started name calling the cops. They were over ragging on him over on the corner, right?
He should have
And they
resisted.
got
Schubert should have resisted.
they got arrested.
or should not have resisted.
Right.
That's what they say.
They got
right?
arrested, and not Schubert, but one of his buddies stayed in jail for 14 days.
But Schubert got right out.
And Beethoven was arrested. Beethoven got arrested.
So some of these the folks that we hail and put up in these ivory towers, even they got kicked out of spaces and went to jail sometimes as well.
But
So
you just don't bring him
so
up.
that woman is in great company. All right, here's a little bit of the first movement of Schubert's String Quintet in C major to get us to our second movement. If I can be a nerd for a second, I hear the tipping of the hat to Beethoven throughout that performance with the da 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 da.
Mhm.
They would see Beethoven's fifth was even overplayed back then, so so they put it in the music just to
By
tip the hat
all
to it.
all the top 40 orchestras.
Do you tell your audience over there at your job that Schubert went to jail?
I did.
What did? Oh, I'm sure someone is
Oh,
upset.
I made a lot of people mad. I made a lot of people mad.
So let's unpack that real quick before we talk about this music. Why are they mad? Why are you mad? Why are you mad? That's my question. Why do you think they're upset?
Well, some of them think I just talk too much, period. And some of them just don't like me,
Okay,
and they
well,
don't want to hear me say anything.
so it doesn't matter what it is for those people, but
Mhm.
other people.
The question is, what difference does this make? Why do I need to know this? about this composer. And my response is, so that you understand that they are like you, that they are
They
like all of us.
go ahead. They like yo rowdy, no good, yo niece and nephew in jail, and yes, this composer that you put over their head talking about get some culture and X, Y, and Z, they went to jail as well.
For flipping off the police.
Right. So that's why you need to know it. I think there's a lot of value to humanizing. You know, if we, again, we have enough new music by diverse composers out here to not ever listen to Schubert on the radio anymore. As for, you know, that's the radical place I sit. And if we're going to talk about these composers and continue to censor them, why not tell a different story? And on top of that, why not tell a story that might humanize them even more?
100%.
Your uncle, your auntie went to jail for flipping off the cops, and so did this composer. So sit down and listen to this beautiful, pretty music he wrote.
Yeah. And for Beethoven, it was vagrancy.
Mm-hmm. See, where are their fathers? See, you didn't hear about William Grant Still now. Going,
I haven't.
No, because these jazz players, they got down. They did a little bit of everything. Anyway, we're all people. I guess that's
my point.
That's the point of it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll talk about. We'll get to that in the fourth movement. But we're here in the second movement. We're gonna take the second ending. We take a piece of music that we've been repeating over and over the week, and instead of repeating it again completely, we just talk about a little bit of the reason why we've been doing so. I'm gonna get us started this week. So over the past month, maybe month and a half, I've been spending a lot of time with acoustic Lady Gaga. And I'm not sure how that happened. You know, sometimes you fall into a YouTube rabbit hole and you
True.
just stay there for a while. So literally for the past 6 or 7 weeks, I've just been listening to all of the acoustic Lady Gaga performances out there. And I wanted to share one this week. This is an acoustic performance of The Edge of Glory. It says here, live from a very Gaga Thanksgiving. So I did want to acknowledge so-called Thanksgiving. I'll speak to that a little bit in the Trilloquy, but despite the language we use and the history that we need to continue to center and acknowledge, this is a time of coming together for a lot of people. Not only family, but I think the Friendsgivings have become a very popular thing amongst the culture. Your chosen family coming together for a meal and doing all that.
I look forward to that.
There's an image that I think is really beautiful with this performance by Lady Gaga. I'll put the link in the description. She's playing a piano that looks like it is the dinner table. So they're just sitting around and she's having a good old time singing songs and telling stories. And I think her treatment of her pop tune, The Edge of Glory, is particularly beautiful. So we're going to listen to a little bit of this here.
Tonight, yeah, baby, I'm on the edge of something final we call life tonight. All right, all right. Put on your shades, I know you're dancing in the flames. Tonight, yeah, baby, night, yeah, baby. Oh, it isn't hell if everybody knows my name tonight. It's hard to feel.
It's not hell if everybody knows my name tonight. Okay, we're talking. I don't know why I'm feeling in my feelings today. It was the Samuel Coleridge Taylor first, and now it's this. Okay.
Yeah, what is this?
So you were speaking to being trapped at home. We haven't had the person-to-person interaction. We're getting used to being out again. I'm sure a lot of that for some people is sort of the awkwardness of going out maybe to a movie by yourself, or even if someone invites you to a small house party or gathering, just the idea, oh, you know, I'm awkward. Should I stand here? Oh, who should I talk to? You know, all of those feelings are real feelings. But if you can just for a moment be in a space where, as she sings there, everybody knows your name, you know, what a powerful feeling to get to, you know, have those memories and have that time together. And then the just general theme of the song, edge of glory, just on the precipice of something that can be so much more. A few weeks ago, you talked about some music that you're sort of playing around with and developing with some friends, and how something you brought in to the second movement, I forget what it was, gave you the feeling that there may be something more, something
Sure.
beyond, some more opportunity. I think that's what this song speaks to. Not only that thing existing, but you being on the edge of experiencing that thing, on the edge of glory, as the title of the song says. So anyway, the original version of the song that came out with the album, I think it was the album Born This Way, I can't remember, but very poppy, very Lady Gaga, as most folks would know
Right.
her music to sound. But to break down that music and just get into the artistry of this musician, I think you can get closer to the spirit of the music, the theme of it, and then to have the setting of like a Friendsgiving, I'll call it here in this video, this acoustic performance was originally presented. I think it's a really beautiful thing, and I've enjoyed spending some time with it.
Maybe I did talk with you about this idea of relishing that feeling of being on the edge
Hmm.
of something rather than actually achieving it.
Sure.
So, which would you rather? Would you rather have the striving or the achieving?
The achieving, the achieving. I think that we use phrases like "fake it till you make it" or all of those things. I understand the importance of the journey. I think the journey wouldn't exist if it weren't for the destination. So
Mm.
I'm always about reaching and achieving that thing. Is radar okay?
I don't know. Maybe we got a late start. He's shaking earlier than normal.
Do we need to take a brief intermission?
No, we're good.
Okay. All right. Anyway, Edge of Glory, Lady Gaga. We'll listen to just a few more segments of this since she sang it so beautifully.
On the edge of glory, and I'm hanging on the truth. Out on the edge of glory, and I'm hanging on, baby, with you. I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge. I'm on the edge. The edge. The edge. I'm on the edge of glory.
Who said Lady Gaga can't sing? Who
It
said
wasn't
Lady
me.
Gaga can't sing?
It wasn't me.
I enjoy so many different types of artists and different sorts of aesthetics that artists can bring forward. And I thought about bringing in some more music by 24 Karat Black this week. I'll do that in the coming weeks, but I just felt like I had to give some space to Lady Gaga, and the fact that she gave a Thanksgiving themed, at least visually, performance
Mm.
and did so beautifully. I just had to bring it in this week. So shout out to Lady Gaga. If you only are familiar with the pop gay bar boots and cats, Lady Gaga, I really encourage you, just go to YouTube or something and search Lady Gaga acoustic, or listen to the album Joanne. She's one of these artists who has the ability to paint musical pictures in so many different colors. And while the pop side of it is really what propelled her, put her on the map for so many people, there's a lot more to appreciate there. So
I used to do a cover of Bad Romance in the style of Leon Redbone.
oh yeah, well, record it and maybe I'll consider it for my second edition. Anyway, what you got this week for a second edition?
Talk about listening to all sorts of different styles and things lately, rather than we were talking about how you listen to something to get ready to exercise or get ready for your day, something to wind down. You have things that you go to that you like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, rather than trying to find something to escape, instead I've been leaning into pieces of music that feed the dissonance that I feel.
That help you
Or-
feel what you're feeling.
Exactly.
As my therapist would say.
Exactly. And I got down a YouTube rabbit hole, like you were talking about before, and I came across a composer who is right now at Michigan State. And as soon as she finishes up her schoolwork there, she plans to return to Wichita, Kansas, and work and teach there. So
Mhm.
that'll be her home base. But her name is Diana Wallace.
Why are you laughing?
Because I know what you're gonna say.
Listen, Shout out to Dayana. I'm gonna link her website in the description. So many people can list so many different things. You know, we talk about privilege. We can begin our bios, our official bios on our website in so many different ways. The first sentence of mine, I think, is a proud native of Memphis, Tennessee, Garrett McQueen, X, Y, and Z. So that's
Sure.
my way of shouting out Memphis. Again, shout out, rest in peace to Young Dolph. People from Memphis, we're good about shouting out our city. Anyway, Dayana can't do that because y'all don't know how to say her name. So the first sentence of this bio, my name is Dayana Wallace, parentheses, day on like spending a day on a beach.
And I'm a composer.
And I love it. But not only, I think, does that speak to an experience that I know that she has had of people just saying her name all kind of ways. It offers a little chuckle for folks who understand the culture and the stories behind that challenge, but it also humanizes her in a way that makes not only her spirit and her person so much more approachable. I think it humanizes the music as
Mhm.
well. I feel like we're listening to the music. You've been listening to the music of someone with a sense of humor, with someone who knows how to engage human beings.
And her compositions really run a gamut
Mhm.
because there are some I'm thinking of one called Scar that has a lot of those moments that are just like,
Yeah.
that feed the angst or the anxiety, the agitation that I'm feeling physically.
Yeah.
Another one called Shades, which moves from the really pleasant floating stuff into more jarring. And then I run across this one with it's a viola and vocalist duo. Carrie Henneman Shaw is the vocalist, and I thought, look at this, it's Sam Bergman
Yeah. Shout
playing
out to
viola.
Sam,
And I
violist with the Minnesota Orchestra for folks who don't know.
and I found this video from the Great Northern and Street Factory Media from February of this year at Parkway Theater. These two did a duo written by Diana Wallace called "I Am the Mind of Winter," and it, I've told you before that this sort of art song sort of thing isn't my bag, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's Diana's composition in concert with the way that it's performed, but it just seems so well balanced that I wrote along with him.
Shagged with ice, and the spruces in the distant glitter of a January sun. I find beauty in the sound of the wind. I find beauty in the sound of a few leaves, which is the
So, what
sound of the
talk to me more about the aesthetic that this song is bringing forward, coming of winter,
Hmm.
sheltering up next to what you're feeling and how those two things impact each other.
I hadn't thought about that, but I
Well, I mean,
do.
well, you already spoke to listening to music that digs into whatever dissonances you're feeling in your life, considering the news or whatever is going on. You spoke to the music reinforcing or speaking to that experience. So how does this do
Finding
that?
comfort in the sound of the wind. Yeah, you know, you alluded a little bit earlier that you're sort of getting acclimated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so perhaps there is a certain comfort of shutting in and settling down, but at the same time, I'm a little bit worried because I've already spent an awful lot of time alone. You know, and it's so freaking dark. I mean,
Yeah.
God, at 5 o'clock, it's like
Yeah.
you're in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
vault.
it's like at 4:30,
And
it's dusk outside, you know?
and this performance, perhaps there was something about just being able to see it too, because you see the investment in their performance as well.
Mhm.
And Sam is selling it. You know,
Yeah.
Sam is right there.
Mhm.
And Dayana, I just appreciate you
Yeah.
because
Me too.
she's written three pieces that I've been back to frequently: Scars, Shades, and I Am the Mind of Winter.
Yeah. And I also just have to mention that Sam Bergman is one of those orchestral musicians who doesn't have to be doing any of this. You know, they make the money that they need over there, excuse me, at the Minnesota Orchestra, and he could be going to rehearsals, doing these performances, and going home and living his life. But he's one of these musicians, one of many, I'm sure, across the country, but one of the ones here who is very active, on social media in conversations that deal with decolonizing and breaking down these spaces. He's putting together these programs and these concerts. I spoke at one not too long ago where not only an alternative to the concert hall is being presented, but one that highlights and centers Black voices. And it doesn't have to be during Black History Month. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be during Women's History Month. It doesn't have to be any of those things for him to take the opportunity to platform a Black woman's music who we may not otherwise know. She's not getting I don't imagine, she's gotten to the point to where she's getting the orchestral commissions, even the music getting performed on radio or whatever. But Sam Bergman is doing his part. He's doing what he can. We talk about what happens behind the scenes or what
Right.
people are doing. I understand the importance of behind the scenes orchestral work. That's fine. That's easy for people to say to me and folks like me who don't really have any measurable impact. And then you have folks like Sam who are really stepping out and putting the extra effort where he wouldn't even need to make sure that he's serving audiences, he's serving composers, and giving light to so much stuff, and giving folks like us the opportunity to talk about it. The circle of equity, not the circle of life, but the the circle of equity.
He
Yeah.
also built a one-room cabin on his land up north by himself, so shout out Sam Bergman.
Yeah, viola players are, if you can withstand the culture of classical music
Ooh.
as they just deal with violas, like the shit that they have
Ooh.
to deal with, of course he can build a cabin and put together concerts. Hell, you went through everything to get where you are today. Hell, winning an audition. I'm sure he went up against 200 viola players, probably more for his
Sure,
job,
sure.
so real deal. Shout out to Sam Bergman. Again, the vocalist in that recording, Carrie Henneman Shaw. Shout out to you, and shout out to Dayana Wallace. It is a beautiful Dayana Triloquy podcast,
Oh,
getting
boo.
to learn your music. Getting to I'll give myself the all right.
There you go.
Well, we're getting into the third movement. Last week, I featured part one of my conversation with Rhapsody Snyder and Orbert Davis from the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic. You weren't here for me to say it to you, Scott, but isn't Rhapsody a really incredible name? It's music related. It's
Yeah.
it's sort of like you have to do something like lead a jazz philharmonic if your name is Rhapsody. Shout out to Rhapsody and shout out to Orbit for sitting with me. So this week, I'm featuring part two of our conversation. We're gonna pick it up where Rhapsody was talking about not only doing equitable work, diversifying the space. When it comes to programming, really transforming accessibility and their goal to make all concerts free. I think that's really groundbreaking and something that can really push down the doors of so many of these institutions if they could center that project, the project of raising the money, finding the staff, whatever you need to do to make sure everyone has access to your space, everyone who wants it. So we're going to pick up there to get us into part B of my conversation with them. We're going to check out a work by Orbit Davis, a performance by the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, a tune here called The Creation of the Evolution Part 2, since we're doing part 2 of my conversation. So here's a bit of that, and here's my conversation with Rhapsody Snyder and Orbit Davis from the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic.
The pandemic has really shifted the way that the organization views these things, right? And it's always been a priority. It's always been a value. And CJP has often done free concerts in a way to make this music and the experiences accessible to everyone. So we're exploring some avenues now, if I can let the cat out of the bag, Orbit, to formally, as a part of the mission of CJP, be able to offer free concerts, all of our programming to be free and accessible to everyone. So we're, putting together the steps necessary to make that happen, instead of just having a few free performances a year and then other things be ticketed at the normal, big houses here in Chicago, so that, absolutely everything we do is something that everybody can participate in.
Right.
So, Orbit, do you think it impacts people's the value that people place on this art if it is free? I mean, there's always the conversation of, well, if people really value something, they'll pay for it. Does it put that the value of this art in danger from your perspective by making these concerts free, especially considering how expensive it still might be to go see, Rachmaninoff or a Rossini opera or those things in Chicago?
I honestly don't think so. I don't think it's in jeopardy at all, because again, when you look at the demographics of sales, if a concert hall is full of, say 4,000 people, there's still 10,000 people right outside the door.
Mhm.
I think so. The aspect is, it's and we hear often about the death of the classical audience, or the silver hair. You look in the audience and it's all silver hair. I mean,
Mhm.
that's totally fine, but where's the diversity in that? Or how do you build that kind of diversity? And yeah, there are some shows that we would put on that would be a ticketed event. Our good friend Kurt Elling, and Kurt comes, we do free concerts at Millennium Park or whatever, but there's a couple productions we're conceiving now with him and other people.
Mhm.
That's a paid ticket, but I think it's just this simple aspect of if you want to reach more people, reach that larger demographic. And another thing about funding too is that I think before the pandemic, we would have been extremely afraid to make this move like this.
Hmm.
But I think because of the pandemic, people and funders especially, and general population, have thought about things differently. Giving has really increased. I think that this kind of idea would tug at the heartstrings of a funder to say that, well, this is so important to reach people, as opposed to let's go back to counting the behinds in the seat, and then we have this constantly disappointment or anxiety because everything's about getting the people in the seat. And I try to, whenever that conversation happens, talk about the mute button. I would mute and close my ear. I don't want to hear that. I want to stay artistic. I don't want to have to be concerned that the music that I write is going to reflect how many people come.
Yeah. And I guess that's a good situation to be in, to be able to focus on the art.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I wonder about before we begin to wrap up, Orbit, I wonder if you would speak to CJP's education initiatives.
Mhm.
It's one thing to, for an orchestra, a Western classical orchestra, to send a trumpet player into a school to do X, Y, and Z. I'm thinking it must be different for a CJP musician or you to go into a school and show them what you got.
You better believe it. Actually, Chicago Jazz Philharmonic started as an education program.
Mm.
And actually, it's funny, I forgot to change my screen behind me. The DMDL, you see that's my other
Mhm.
company, and it's called Discover Music, Discover Life. It's an education program that uses music components to teach reading and math. So we reach thousands of kids every week, kids who are failing, because we believe in not only the power of music, but how music can connect and lift them out of this kind of like place of insufficiency in terms of the academics. And we have a 98% rate of improvement for all of our kids. It's like you take this program, you will improve. And that's part of Mark Ingram, our co-founder and my business partner, our kind of aesthetic of, if we're really going to make change, you have to start not here, but start here. You have to start here and make it accessible, make education accessible. And we can complain about education all day long, but if we're not willing to get in the trenches and get our hands dirty, then who are we fooling? I tell people now, people call me and say, well, we want you to come play for this event. How much would it cost? I will say, well, I'm very expensive. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. That's just the way it is. And they'll say, well, it's for this group of kids. I'm free.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's just a matter of what that purpose is. You know, we did a very extensive strategic planning a few years ago, and spent a lot of money for it, but it was worth every penny because of the narrative that came out of it. And the narrative is when Chicago Jazz Philharmonic is in any space where there's education, our leadership business program on the stage, wherever it is, change happens. And it's the change in the conversation because now we have musicians who are different looking at this environment and saying, you know, I'm being affected by this. We're talking about it. While we're doing it, the congregation or the audience is saying, holy cow, I didn't expect that. I didn't realize that I like classical music. I didn't realize I
Yeah.
love jazz. So conversation, if you change the conversation, you first of all, we're changing creative practice, which is a given. Conversation, and then we change lives. You know, really it's about changing lives. I mean, we could talk maybe if you want to invite us back, we could talk about our Cuba experience where
Sure.
what we did there 12 years ago is actually even now changing very lives of not only the 60 students that we worked with, but their entire families. When you change lives, you change the community. You know, and I think a lot of people get in this when they're in the boardrooms and they say we have to affect the community. No, you can't start with that idea. You got to start with, well, how are we changing our creative practice? How are we adapting creative practice so that we can attract the very people that we want to change? You know, and as you know, well, first I do want to say before I go there, I want to say that in Third Stream, if you were to be our next guest soloist,
Okay.
you would never have to think about anything jazz. I would
Okay.
simply, no, you come in this situation, you be you. I can already hear what direction we're going in. We're going to go in, it's classical because that's what you play. We're going to go hip hop. We're going to go jazz, and we're going to go gospel just by what you said in
Okay.
this conversation. And see,
Amen.
so then my goal and my methodology is to how to bring that out of you and have the orchestra support who you are.
Wow, that's a beautiful concept, and I look forward to that invitation sometime.
Let's do it. Seriously, I mean, it really truly works. But again, we got to get in our world of orchestras. And you know this, we got to get away from the diversity, meaning how many people of color we got in the orchestra.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, that is so 70s. I grew up in this. I grew up in the 70s. And if there was a black person on TV, the Davis household stopped. And it was sit down and listen.
Wow. So y'all were there for Star Trek with
Oh,
Uhura.
Diane Carroll, Julia, Sanford and Son, Jefferson, because it was all because of, and especially like shows like Ed Sullivan, things, because it's like we don't get this opportunity often. And if they're on there, they deserve our buy-in, our respect. But that's kind of what we do with the orchestra. We say, okay, 1, 2, 3, there's 100 people on stage. You got 3, you're good. Oh,
And that would be a lot for
Yes.
Right.
for most
Yes,
orchestras.
it would.
Right. But think about this though. True diversity is when the creative practice or the music reflects the people on the stage. And it doesn't have to be radical. It's just acknowledging this. And then, because if again, I could sit back in the day when I was really in the class, I could sit in any orchestra. I mean, but does that change anything? Are we still from the European mindset, or are we diversifying the way that we think?
Yeah.
And that's what Cuba taught me was there's these amazing musicians who are at the top of their game classically, but when they bring in their aesthetic, their rhythm aesthetic to it, it's like something you've never heard of, you never see, because of that's who they are, Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's rich. That's really deep. Rhapsody, I know something that we've talked about before. the teaching of this music, certainly black music, third stream, all of these things can be the road to other bits of education. My understanding, for example, of the 13th Amendment came from my studying Harry Thacker Burleigh and then going down that rabbit hole of music. And now I'm learning about things that have nothing to do with music, but are still very much a part of my identity. I wonder what your perspective on that is as far as the education work that CJP is doing.
Yeah, it's so important when we go into schools or through our Saturday, Jazz Academy and our summer camp, and teaching the concepts of improvisation, and not just learning how to play jazz tunes, right? And go and practicing your jazz tunes at home, but the concept of improvisation and how scary it can be for so many people. And I wanted to bring this up earlier in the conversation too. I think that it is the thing that scares classical musicians the most.
Oh yeah. Not having notes on a page.
I don't know what to play. What am I supposed to do? But one, having that courage to try and to maybe fail sometimes, or not fail, or or to improve, or whatever that is. But those are the types of life skills that we want the students to take away, more so than learning how to play their instrument well, more so than having an appreciation for music and being a lifelong music lover, which is what so many these types of education programs kind of preach. But more so than that, we want different kinds of life skills, such as tenacity, determination, picking yourself back up again when things are really difficult, when something didn't go well. Those are things that will really help you down the road, not just instilling a love of music so that in 20 years they come and they support a different orchestra again because they love music.
Yeah.
So I think that's where CJP and our education programs really shine, and what makes it really different than a lot of other types of education programs.
Yeah, I think I hear you speaking to the relationship. It's not just this spatial abstract idea of, oh, I love music. It's, the people connected to it. It's the people that make the music. Yeah, that's really incredible. I have one more question for the both of you, but before I do that, Rhapsody, I wonder if you'll let folks know how they can get more information on CJP, check out some upcoming performances, maybe check out past performances.
Absolutely. So everyone is invited to visit our website at www.chicagojazzphilharmonic.org. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. So just give us a quick search. There's lots of we're really into live streaming and rebroadcasting concerts that we've done before. So for example, we just had a concert a few weeks ago, our Chicago Immigrant Stories 3. We are going to be rebroadcasting that on Facebook Live this Sunday at 3 p.m. So that's very, very exciting. Of course, that's free and accessible for everyone. Yeah.
You're mentioning the immigrant stories, just reminded me in this moment. Studying and learning about music down in Haiti brought me to the fact that someone never managed to teach me in school that a Haitian man founded Chicago. I think that's another example. The name Du Sable is one I learned this year in 2021. So, maybe I'll let both of you react to both of these questions that I have to close up. So the first one, I'll start with you, Rhapsody. Can the classical field be changed to look more like third stream? Do we have the opportunity? Is it possible for third stream not to be the accessory or the novelty, but the norm?
I'm like, ooh, I want that question. I want that question. Go ahead, Rhapsody.
My answer is absolutely. There's repertoire to play. Even if an organization doesn't necessarily want to change their entire orchestra or change the organization to be a third stream organization at heart or at mission, there is third stream repertoire which every organization can play. Most of it for the entire genre is written here by our own Orbor Davis. That would be a very, very easy start, which could be incorporated into every concert. have one piece by a local composer that is different, that would include different kinds of musicians that bridge that gap and play both classical and jazz. It could be quite an easy start.
I mean, Orbit, I think the argument could be made that you're writing this music for each concert and putting it up on stage. That's closer to the Western European classical tradition than
Very much.
anything else because Beethoven was on the podium, Mozart
Right.
was on the podium.
Yep. Yep. And it's
But
programmatic. Yeah. It's
yeah.
every, one thing you'll find, and I can send you links, and there's no two CJP performances or recording that's the same. We revisited Miles Davis's Sketches of Spain, and I totally took apart the original. I was with another organization for many years under Bill Russo, who was a
Mhm.
arranger for Stan Kenton, but he's also a classical composer. And I played the Miles Davis part of the original Sketches of Spain, and oh my goodness, it was such a joy taking it apart, putting it back together, writing a few different movements. But that's so totally different from our very first recording, which is Collective Creativity, which imagines Igor Stravinsky being a part of the AACM.
Mm.
So we featured 4 AACM musicians. Matter of fact, as a bassoonist, you'll appreciate this. We took the Berceuse, the lullaby,
Yep.
which features bassoon, and I transcribed it and took the bassoon out, replaced it with tenor saxophone.
Okay.
But in the first statement, he had to play it verbatim as the bassoon played it. The
Mhm.
second, just slightly improvise, just slightly, ever so free up. And by the end of that section, he's a lot freer. Nothing outside, and it ends where it ends. And then the second half, I arranged it like a Miles Davis, kind of like Kind of Blue era, with muted trumpet and a chord progression similar to Stravinsky's. But what happens when you hear that is that, and a lot of classical people say, "Oh wow," as long as they're not insulted that I took the liberties to take out the bassoon, you
Well,
know.
Stravinsky won't be there, so it's
Yeah,
fine.
but you know what? But as you say that, I think so many composers, especially those who are gone, would really appreciate the creativity of making change. I have another
Yeah.
piece. I took a Mozart string quartet, Corco 173 fourth movement. It's the chromatic string quartet. I kept the string quartet intact. I don't want to mess with Mozart, but gradually through, I introduce a figured bass and cymbals, drums, just lightly coming in, and then piano, and the piano's doing like what would be like a fifth part, and I took parts from the strings and interwoven this piano part. And
Mhm.
but what happens in this first break, then it goes to improvisation, and the audience is like, what happened? What happened? It's like gradually being led in. But then it goes back to Mozart, and it goes back and forth. I'll send you a
Oh,
virtual
please, please.
recording. But again, I give great respect to Amadeus, but I think he would appreciate, just in the times that this is, making it modern, making it different, and But again, that's totally different than any other thing, But that's what keeps me going as a composer, is that I don't have to be myself, if you will.
Mm.
I can
Sure, sure.
constantly just, okay, where's this going? And this drives my wife crazy. I spend at least 75% of my time in research and only 25% actually composing,
Wow.
making all the connections, filling up a notebook full of ideas and sights and sound. I'll put up like Sketches of Spain. I visited Spain through National Geographic, and
Mhm.
just put images up, and I would look at flamenco dancers and think, what is on her mind as she makes that move, frozen in time, and that would somehow trigger a sound or something that moves, and I put musical notes, and then in time it becomes the composition.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Thank
That's
you.
beautiful. My final question for both of you. I'll start with you, Rhapsody. So many as schools open back up, where quarantine is where we're getting our hands on that. Uh, we have students, the next wave of students going to school and picking up that instrument, opening that case for the very first time. I wonder, Rhapsody, what would be your words to those parents? I know so many parents, mine included, couldn't really see or understand what the possibilities are in beginning music, whether it's to become a musician or to do something else. I wonder what your words are, considering the work you do with CJP, to those parents as far as the possibilities, why they should stick with it.
Oh, it's it's a conversation I've had so many times with so many parents in my long career of teaching. I think mostly it's important for students to feel as though they have an avenue, if they don't have one already, for self-expression, for learning how to communicate with a different form other than words. How can you express the exact same idea or concept or feeling to another person without using words? And whether that's, and that is a plug for all of the performing arts, by the way, not just music.
Sure.
As a life skill that students can take away with them, and specifically in relationship to what we do, I think it's that accessing that creativity and that freedom that you have inside of you, that all of us have inside of us, and using the instrument as just another tool to access that. And to be able to maybe share that and connect with others in a different way as well.
Yeah, yeah. I love the phrase an avenue towards a thing. I've always considered, especially in my professional career, the bassoon as the vehicle to that thing. And that's the car that I drive best. I drive other cars, but
Nice.
that's the one that'll get me there, with the fewest bumps and bruises.
I love it.
Right.
I love that.
So Orbert, same question, but directed toward the kids. What do you tell that fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grader opening up that case for the first time? What do you say to them to keep them excited about this new thing they've discovered?
Well, the first thing I say is make a sound. Make a sound and reward them for the sound, because that's the thing. It's when I was a college professor. Oh my goodness, I got in so much trouble by the things that I would tell students. I would tell them, I don't care what it sounds like. Pick it up and play. And other professors say that is just there's no pedagogy in that. What do you mean? You have to show them what to play? No, make a sound, because we can correct it. But if they feel like it's bad, then you now have to kind of push them up a hill. But if they make a sound and say, okay, yeah, that was kind of cool. Now let's just try this other sound. Let's do this. And then you say, oh, well, you know what? Let's work on this embouchure now. So do this, tighten these corners a little bit, take a deep breath, and I'll play a sound. It may be the next week that they actually play a note, but they're on the path. And I did a lot of study on why children quit music. And a lot of it is that because we dig into we destroy their dignity. We destroy their natural tendency to discover. At the college level, the first thing in a class I would say, okay, how many of you want to be a musician? Yay, all the hands. I say, put your hands down. Find something else to do. Second question is, how many of you absolutely have to be a musician? I said, that's who I want to talk to. Because if you absolutely have to do it, you're not here for the ride. You'll be like me. In college, I was a hermit. I didn't realize that DePaul was so close to the lake because I didn't go that far. The music school, the music school, that was as far as I went. That's all I had to do, practice. It was just nothing. There was nothing else mattered because I felt that my life depended on it. I couldn't go back home. This is it. And I wasn't the best trumpet player, but I had to. What was a party? I don't know. That's people going. I guess they're going somewhere while I walk home at midnight back to the dorm to listen to more music. I know it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And there's a spectrum in between of having a real life. But the point is that at that level, you know when you have to do it, when there's no other option. But if you have other options, then fine. Then I tell everybody, explore that passion first, but don't stop playing music, because at the same time you can be so good, and you may find opportunities to continue to express yourself musically, but you got something else to do. But it's acknowledging the passion, acknowledging who you are and where music fits in.
If I could jump in, so something struck me, Orbert, when you were
Mhm.
just talking about, that approach to picking up the instrument and just making a sound, that approach just totally eliminates the whole, concept of right and wrong,
Yes.
which is that there are right notes to play and wrong notes to play, which ties
Yes.
into what we're talking about, why so many musicians are scared of improvising.
That's exactly right.
And because we're taught, right, there's a right way for it to sound because your teacher shows you how it's supposed to sound.
Right.
Yep.
And we study recordings of all of these other pieces that have been recorded for the past 100 years, how it's supposed to sound. When in actuality, so many, you mentioned Mozart or Bach, for example, they were improvising. All of their cadenzas were improv on the spot in concert.
Yeah.
I mean, Bach just sat down every Sunday and just made up stuff,
Right.
having a great time, enjoying it, his passion. But I love that approach so much. And that is so fundamental for students to be able to learn that they can apply that to other parts of their life as well. There is not that right or wrong, but there is trying, there's doing.
There's discovery.
Yeah.
Discovery. And that's the thing. My youngest is turning out to be a pretty competent vibraphone player. And he was Johnny the guinea pig in it. He saw Joel Ross, this professional jazz vibraphonist, and he has my son has issues sitting still, just can't do it. But here we are at the Jazz Showcase, a 90-minute set, and he says, oh. and the thing was, he and Joel brought him up and said, look at it. He just looks. He tells my wife, it's a piano you can hit. I like this one. and then so we would work on stuff, and I just say, okay, let's just go. And he would look at video, and he wants to do the same thing, and he's going, it sounds terrible. Of course, well, no, it sounds very free. I said, keep doing that, and I'll show you a major scale. Now do that same thing with the major scale, and all of a sudden he's going because he wasn't stifled to just let it go. But you know what? That's how we learn to read. We did not. We never tell a child, do not say anything until you can conjugate that sentence.
Right.
What is it? It's goo goo gaga. Ah, we're like, oh, look, they just dad. He said dad. And we celebrate that. But why is it in music? We put the staff in front of them. We put these notes, and you got to play this in the right rhythm. That's why kids quit.
Yeah. I like that idea of it doesn't sound bad, it sounds free. I think I'm going to incorporate that into freedom.
That's awesome.
Another performance there by the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, a tune by Orbert Davis called "The Face of the Enemy is Always Changing." We won't break that down this week, but I love that title, so I had to bring a bit of that in. Huge shout out and thank you once again to Rhapsody Snyder and Orbert Davis at the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic for joining me here on TRILLOQUY. Before we got into the fourth movement, Scott, I wanted to ask you, is this the way forward? This concept of third stream, the space between classical and jazz, keeping the idea and even the instruments of a Western classical orchestra and putting them in a concert hall. So all of that is still in place, but the aesthetic of what's coming from the stage is different and speaks to more cultures and more people. Do you see that as a viable way forward? They've been doing it for a while. What if more ensembles did that? What if that became the norm across the orchestral experience to go hear
you've got some traditional, and then you've got one over here that does everything but traditional?
Well, thing about the city of Chicago, you have the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, you have the Chicago Symphony, you have the Chicago Philharmonic, which is another orchestra. You have the Lyric, you have the Opera Company, you have groups like Adrian Dunn's and the Rise Orchestra. So you have all of these different orchestras doing these different things and serving these different communities. I guess what my question is, what if what the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic has set up as this large symphonic size orchestra that lives in the middle of the classical and the other genres, the jazz and so forth? What if that became the experience of going to an orchestra? What if the Schubert and the Beethoven, all of those things were the once a monthers or whatever, and this, what we're marginalizing now became the center toward diversifying the audience and getting folks into the space?
Doesn't it sound like a nice middle ground?
I like it. I like it. But the thing is that middle ground is so far away from what folks are used to.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a middle ground to some people. I feel like
Yeah.
folks coming, a person like me, that definitely feels like middle ground.
Hmm.
If you go to the orchestra hall to hear Mozart, that music that we just listened to doesn't feel like middle ground, even though it is.
Right. It feels way, way out of the
Right.
comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
So yeah, it might be an answer. Nobody's taken me up on the all black season yet. So
listen, we haven't really gotten to the point, not that I know of, in the world of radio where we have really normalized Tupac next to Beethoven, next to Adolphus Hailstork, next
absolutely
to
not.
Katy Perry, next to whoever, but maybe a performance space that sort of, again, rides in that part of the music, busting down genre and all of that sort of thing. Maybe that can be the example and bleed over into other
Mm-hmm.
mediums like TV and radio and those things. I'm excited about what the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic is doing. I think if that can become the norm, the idea of an orchestra as a thing has a better chance of surviving, because let's face it, the musicians, if you get lucky enough to win a job in one of these orchestras and you can make a living wage playing whatever, I'm sure they're the folks who are just real purists and only want to get a job playing strict Western European classical music. But
Maybe.
I think my point is, I think the musicians would be on board.
Mm.
I don't think you would have folks picketing in the street. Well, you'll have some maybe, but because it is that. But I think, I don't know, for the folks I know, for who I was as an orchestral musician, all the friends I have and still have in the industry, I think it will be just fine as far as they're concerned for orchestras to go in that direction. We have one example of one orchestra doing it. I think we can change that into the norm if we just have the courage to do it, and we'll see positive outcome from it. Well, anyway, we're going to get into the fourth movement here. I'm intentionally not really acknowledging so-called Thanksgiving because, Scott, honestly, I'm just uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with that word. Growing up, we weren't even allowed to say it because my mom's comeback was always, well, you know what? You should be thankful every day.
Sure.
So that was just the thing. Saying Thanksgiving was not really acceptable in that context growing up. And then the more I learn about specifically local history when it comes to indigenous populations, the story of Fort Snelling. If you don't know that story, look that up. I'll put a link in the description. There's all sorts of stuff to learn. Anyway, so I'm just uncomfortable with the concept of Thanksgiving. I like having a nice little friends dinner. I don't do it on the Thursday, just putting slapping a new name on the same thing. I do it at a different time on a different day. On Thursday, that tomorrow, if you're listening to this when this drops, I'll get up and clean the house and watch the parade that's on TV. Look at whose performance is horrible, because that's always what the conversation is the next day or whatever, and just go along with it. But if anything, I know y'all need to ruin Thanksgiving. See, there are a lot of folks who are going home and understand the conversations or are a part of the conversations that we have on this podcast, and whatever line of work you're in or wherever you are, and then you're going to go home and Meemaw or Peepaw says something crazy and you're just going to sit there and ask for the mashed potatoes to be passed to you. No. what I'm going to say about Thanksgiving, and then we're going to get into this fourth movement. I need y'all to ruin it. I need y'all to go in there and be political, be radical, get somebody screaming. I don't know, get dessert canceled, but you can't leave your work. You can't leave your equitable work at the door, at the front porch of grandma's house. That's where it needs to go in. That's why we're still having these conversations and dealing with this stuff, is because we create these safe spaces for problematic language, especially when we get around family that we aren't always around every day. I'm sure that armchair court, the easier said than done. That's what I mean. Easier said than done.
Yeah.
I get that,
Yeah.
but let's do what we got to do. That's all I'm gonna say. So go ruin Thanksgiving, everybody, to get us in. Are you? Would you not? I know you're not traveling anywhere this week, but would you imagine? If some of your your least evolved family members. That's the phrase I'll use. Some of your less evolved family members. We all have them.
Mhm.
I have them. Okay. You could throw a little spice over the dinner conversation, especially if something comes up, right? Or would you not?
And after 2.5
You gonna
years,
play it safe.
after 2.5 years of doing this podcast, I could do it with them not even realizing that I did it.
Anyway, y'all get my point. You get my point.
Paris is burning it.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, getting us here into the fourth movement. I wanted to honor composer Brent Michael Davids. This is a Wisconsin area composer, an indigenous composer who has really introduced me to some concepts that I've been sharing in a lot of my other work, my guest lectures, some of the presentations I've been doing. Music as something that we should center the performance of and not the recordings of, as far as its marketability. Is this good for radio or whatever, but really paying attention to the spirit and the message being brought forward through the performance of the music. We were getting into that back in the first movement with Samuel Coleridge Taylor and, the languages that are being spoken anyway. So because I've been thinking about him and his music so much, I wanted to transition into the fourth movement this week by honoring his music. This is a tune called Testament of Adam, and not Adam, but Atom. It's a piece of music that sort of, speaks to the creation of it all, but from a different perspective. It's one of the many works out there that exists at the intersection of the indigenous experience and perspective and the Black tradition of music here in the United States. So here's a little bit of this, a solo piano work as performed by Emmanuel Arquili. A work again here, Testament of Adam by Brent Michael Davids. A little bit of a trill there at the end in the left hand.
He
That's
was
a
getting
vibe.
it.
Yeah, he was getting it, wasn't he?
Yeah.
40, 50, 60 years ago, I'm sure there have been strong arguments against a piece of music like that being included in any sort of classical programming. I think we're closer now. That's something that maybe you would even see on one of your playlists. But I just really think it's incredible and that piece of music was premiered this year in 2021. So
Mm.
it's just really incredible to hear that level of musicking, as Brent Michael Davids would say, at the intersection of so many things, so many conversations. I see that as what should be the norm, not what is the future, not the new classical, what we should center. And if anything is American classical, I wasn't even trying to talk about all this, but if anything is American classical, it's music written by an indigenous American composer that speaks to the Black experience. If that's not classical, what the hell is, especially here in the United States? Anyway, fourth movement, the Triloquy movement. We're going to talk a little bit about the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict and our reactions and moving forward. Take it away.
My first question to you is, obviously, for me, the whole problem goes back to why was he there?
Mm-hmm.
And why did this person have a gun that he shouldn't have? And why was that removed from the court proceedings? The possession charge was removed, which there goes the case in my mind. I wanted to get your opinion on the white presence in some of these protests about Black people's deaths. I understand the solidarity component, and I applaud that. But there are some who are using this as a way to get violent. And, now we're seeing white folks who support that being targeted. And I think that this is going to set a precedent that we're going to see more violence like this in the name of self-defense. But let me get to the question.
So-called self-defense.
Right, so-called self-defense. But let me ask you the question of white presences in Black-centered protests, good or bad?
I think it depends on the protest. I think ultimately, and I hate giving the answer of it depends, because that frustrates me when people throw that back to me. So what I'll say is, if your presence as a white person in a Black space, any Black space, protest or whatever, is welcomed, it's welcomed. If it's not welcome for whatever reason, there's something else to do. So when it comes to protests of the specifically what we're talking about here, the verdict of Kyle Rittenhouse, if a white person wants to show up and be a part of it and everything's good, everything's chill, that's fine. If the Black folks don't want that white person there, I think the white person has to ask themselves, how else can they be helpful, or how else can they be useful? Because I think at the end of the day, a lot of folks, Black or white or whatever, go to some of these protests to ultimately to feel better, to feel like you did something, to feel like you were a part of something.
It's performative.
That's not the only way to do something. That's not the only way to be in some sort of support. So for me, my opinion is the more important question to ask is, what can I do? What impact can I have? How can my work, how can my actions move toward the greater good or move toward the goal? Not the question of, well, is it okay for me to be here? I mean, I get that, but that's not the only thing to do. That's not the only way to be in
Right.
support of.
And, I have had white people come up and ask me that.
Ask
You
you
know.
the question, well, I don't know if I should, what
No,
is the question?
the question was, don't you think that white people causing violence have been screwing it up for the BLM movement? Believe it or not, there are white people who look at me as a safe way to ask some of these questions, because essentially they're saying, why don't you ask Garrett if I'm wrong on this?
Yeah, yes. I mean, if the question is, are there white people messing it up for the BLM movement? I don't think that. I don't know, that's an interest. I'm trying to break down the ethos of that question, because I don't think the Black Lives Matter movement can be messed up by white folks. Ultimately, I think people who are looking for a reason to not be in support of it may say, oh, well, there was violence there and X, Y, and Z, so if a white person is worried about other white people making the movement or whatever seem bad, at the end of the day, we know who's causing the problems. We know what Black Lives Matter is about. So it can't be messed up.
Okay,
If a
I
person is worried about that, they're worried about white perception of the Black Lives Matter protest.
Right,
And
right.
that's the thing.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
they're worried about. They're not centering the fact that Black Lives Matter is not violent. They're not centering the good things that Black Lives Matter has done. They're thinking about how it's going to look to their fellow whites.
Right. That's all right. That's the level I'll take it the next time they ask me.
So shout out to whoever asked Scott that. Anyway, but back to the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. I mean, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings about what we all saw last week?
I was not surprised at the verdict for the reasons that I cited when I brought in my Trilloquy.
Mm-hmm.
When they removed the gun charge and slapped all sorts of you can and can't refer to the victims as victims or whatever, I said, well, this is over. What I was surprised about was that there weren't more people in the streets after the fact. Me
too. Same.
I thought, here we go. What I'm really concerned about is the Ahmaud Arbery case. If that goes sideways, then we might see some fires. But yeah, I was not surprised for that verdict.
Yeah.
And it took me going on social media and seeing other people's fears and outrage for me to snap to and realize some broader implications.
It's not surprising to many of us, but that doesn't make it not frustrating, not upsetting.
I didn't say that.
And no, I know. This is a high profile example of what goes on every day. Again, when your dad visited about a month ago or whatever, he told the story of the black man being guilty before anything was even said. There weren't any proceedings. I sent you a story earlier today. I'm reading here from the CNN breaking news Twitter account. It says a man who pleaded guilty to the rape and sexual assault of 4 teenagers will avoid prison time after a New York State judge said time behind bars would be inappropriate. Okay, now let's flip that around. People love to say, it's not about race. It's not about race. That's one of the first things when it is absolutely about race. That's one of the first things being said, So if folks don't hear anything else I say on this fourth movement, everything is about race. When it involves a racialized people, a racialized person, a racialized movement, everything that deals with it is absolutely about race. I'm trying to stay calm, but I just get so frustrated
you're doing
at
great.
that. And we have all experienced that. When I got fired from my job, one of the first sentences out of the response before I had said a damn thing, before I said anything, what you read was, this is not about race, because folks know the way things look, and not only the way things look, but the reality of it all. I'm saying all that just in response to the folks who are so comfortable sitting back in that idea of anything in the United States, certainly this incident having nothing to do with race. We have a justice system that leans one way, and that is just obvious to see. We all have stories. Many of us have stories. I was locked up for looking at the judge the wrong way. You were talking about Schubert went to jail for flipping off the police.
Right.
I didn't even do that, and I was locked up for the night. If
Damn.
I go and take a drive and have a bag of weed in the passenger seat of the car, I haven't killed nobody. My tags are good. I pay my taxes, whatever. That would be enough for that police officer to put me in jail. Would it not? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would it not? There are countless stories of black folks who are in jail for having a weapon in the trunk of their car or in the glove box or something that was registered here in the Twin Cities. We all know and say the name George Floyd. We have to continue to say and remember the name Philando Castile. He was killed for having a gun in the car
after he stated that he had it.
He stated and doing nothing. Okay. These are all black men who have died and faced consequences by the justice system. But you have this minor with a military-grade weapon over state lines, kills 2 people, injures a third, and has no consequences. So if you see that, if you understand the reality of all of these different situations and look at the through lines, look at what happens over and over again, you can't allege to not understand that the justice system leans one way. It is so obvious. And since learning about the news, I have really been focusing in on, again, that question that I say the white folks and everyone else need to get into. How can I be impactful? How can I put the conversation forward? How can I get us closer to justice? So, in thinking about that and chanting about it and just spending so much time in meditation, figuring out how I should bring this conversation here to Triloquy this week. What I came to was flipping this situation and thinking about it as an opportunity. One of those ancient Buddhist concepts is change poison to medicine, and the
Mhm,
more poison
mhm.
you got, the more medicine you can potentially have.
Hmm.
We have this situation. We have this murky, mucky justice system here in the United States that is so unjust. If we can bring more awareness to this and work towards flipping it around, think about the benefits, think about the positivity that can come if we all just get together and do that. My approach and my gospel, my sermon is not to go out and find a way to bury Kyle Rittenhouse because he's one white boy that got off. He's one person who the justice system, waved a hand to while imprisoning all of these other people. We have a system that we have to deal with. We have a system that we have to dismantle. Before we dismantle it, we have to recognize what the problem is. Scott, I feel like so many white folks are just unwilling to live in the reality that the justice system is your justice system, but not mine.
Right.
Not mine. Remember, there was that woman, I think she was down in Nashville, got sentenced to life, and I think has been exonerated, let out of jail, but got sentenced to life for killing her sex trafficker. Do you remember that? A
Yeah.
young black woman.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a sex trafficker. I thought it was just an abusive partner.
Even so,
Right. It doesn't matter.
even so, life for that,
Right.
and Kyle gets nothing. Okay, so we have the material. Look at the material, as New York awful Craven Love would say. We have the material. We have the receipts. So where do we go from here? We have to consider how this is an example of the broader white supremacy of the United States. And I know that again we're getting into scary territory for a lot of people, thinking about the United States itself as racist, especially considering that y'all's person of color vice president said America is not a racist country, right? Okay. Well, don't be fooled. This is the justice system, considering all the receipts we have, okay? We have determined it is undeniable that the justice system leans one way. The justice system is one of the systems that leans that way. So, what my word is for everyone to understand that your system leans that way too. No matter what industry you work in, where you work, what field what field you are in, it systemically, with the exception of some historically black industries, of course, and independent business and those things, your institutions lean one way, especially when we talk about arts institutions. We aren't talking about orchestras. We aren't talking about conservatories. We aren't talking about radio stations who have always played the music of the safest of the black composers, even the Florence Price, the William Grant Still, the Joplin, the Margaret Bonds, the
Mhm.
Samuel Coleridge Taylor. I can go on. These institutions haven't even done that historically. Okay. So how can we allege that these institutions don't lean one way if if we aren't even seeing the alive and living and well artists being platformed in these spaces within these communities with these diverse populations? It cannot be denied, but we cannot change these things until we face it. James Baldwin said, nothing can be changed unless it is faced. I'm giving the
Paraphrasing.
paraphrase. Thank you. But we aren't even there. We aren't to the point to where we're getting white folks to say, wow, this orchestra I play for, this job I work at, these people I surround, just like the justice system, just like many of these other systems, lean one way. And it's not about guilt. It's not about making anyone feel guilty. It's about saying what is obvious. It is about saying what is obvious. Talk to me, Scott. Am I connecting here? Again, I'm not here to debate whether or not the justice system leans one way because that is obvious. How can we get more people to understand how all of our systems are represented in what we saw this past week with Kyle Rittenhouse toward changing it, accepting the justice system as an example of all of these other systems, including the arts, especially the arts.
If I knew and I could monetize it, I would be a kabillionaire.
Well, we're talking about elevator pitches, right? We've done that. We've done that analogy. How do you say to your colleague or to your friend, to your family member over the Thanksgiving table that all of our systems lean this way?
Right. All I can do is work in my field. And like I said earlier on, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't, and I would rather be damned to do. So even as it feels like I'm pounding my head against a wall, I have to keep doing that because I don't know what else to do. So my answer right now is just to keep trying and hope that I can change a few minds along the way. If I can, maybe it'll spread. Maybe I'm being Pollyanna. I don't know.
I put this on my Instagram story a few days ago, maybe, as I was working my way through these feelings, a quote by the late, great Huey Newton, one of the founders of the Black Panther Party. He says, "The first lesson a revolutionary must learn is that he is a doomed man. Unless he understands this, he does not grasp the essential meaning of his life." If we're determining, Scott, and I'm wrapping up here, I know we're going late. If we're determining through our obvious examples that this system ain't right, to go against the system is to go against the system. It is not something comfortable. It is not something that's going to feel good. It's not something that a lot of people, maybe even most people, are going to like, depending on your means or where you work or how you traverse it. Those things cannot exist in changing the system. I don't believe that a revolutionary is doomed and that we will all fail. We will all die before we see the change. I think, the way I interpret that quote is what you're speaking to: damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah, it's a damned path to have the audacity to go against the grain. But how else can we exist? I wouldn't do it any other way. If I lived 1,000 lives, I would make many of the same decisions that I have made. Maybe I would have played, I don't know, the violin instead of the bassoon, but because as concert master, I would have I could get into a lot of trouble in an orchestra, right? So thinking about using positions of influence for the good. Anyway, my point is, being that voice of change, looking at these situations in the justice system or whatever, and applying them to our own fields of work is required work, because the justice system is one example. I'm chanting and praying for everyone involved. I posted the response of one of the families of the deceased. I can't imagine losing someone I love, and the person that killed them just gets off scot-free. I mean, self-defense and all of that. So I think, in closing, if we, and this is my opinion, I'm not throwing any bail at Kyle Rittenhouse. Send him to jail, put him under the jail, and quite frankly, Scott, put his mom under the jail as well, because she was an accomplice to those murders. She drove him there. Okay, so I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying, we have to decenter this situation and look at it as an example of the larger systems that lean in this same racist direction. And unless we're recognizing how our own systems that we live within are a reverberation of this, we can't make change. It's the only way to do it. Anti-racism is work. It's not a feeling. It's not a state of being. It's work. And unless we're working toward that and recognizing ways that we can make those changes, and however we can, whether it's, I'm not going to listen to examples because I'm not going to subtweet anything or anybody, but in whatever way you can make change, do that. It's the only way. If you aren't actively pushing against, you're actively pushing with. And that makes you my enemy. And if you're my enemy, Scott, you are on the wrong side of the battle. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.